Donato's just didn't add bacon to their pizzas. They added bacon to their bacon. It's Donato's new Bacon Duo pizzas. 2 pizzas, each with 2 kinds of bacon. Try the new Pepperoni Bacon Duo with pepperoni, Canadian bacon, and hardwood smoked bacon. And the Chipotle Bacon Duo with Canadian bacon and Chipotle seasoned bacon. Now get $2 off a large Bacon Duo or any large pizza. Use promo code 2. Donato's. Every piece is important.
Still paying hundreds of dollars for prescription glasses? Let's change that. At Zenni.com, our factory direct model means no middlemen or outrageous markups. Just the same quality frames and lens options as the other guys for 1/10 the price. Zenni offers prescription glasses starting at $6.95, as well as affordable sunglasses, blue blockers, and more. The best part? Try any frame, anywhere, with our 3D virtual try-on. Visit Zenni.com today and change the way you buy glasses forever.
Hey guys, this is Gail Kim from Impact Wrestling, and you are listening to the 8-Bit Suplex Podcast.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of the 8-Bit Suplex here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. This is one half of your host, Josh McLaughlin, signing in to first wish you guys happy holidays. Thanks for listening right before we get right deep into the Christmas season. We're in the heart of it. Sandy is unfortunately out this week, but filling in, as he is one to do, is Mr. Dan Coffin. Dan, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Podcaster X, showing up when somebody gets injured.
That's a Speed Racer reference for all you youngsters out there. If you don't know what Speed Racer is, go watch some Boomerang on Amazon Prime. That's a good way to get caught up on all things Speed Racer. And the Wachowskis, the Wachowskis made that movie with John Goodman, and that was pretty good.
Yeah, and they're
John Goodman did not play Speed Racer.
Digital Chimp and some other stuff in it.
Yeah, I just do want to make sure John Goodman was not Speed Racer. He played the dad. So if you didn't see the movie and you know the cartoon and you're like, John Goodman played Speed Racer? No. I'm not saying
Pops,
that.
Right?
He played Pops, yeah. I think that was the default name for all TV dads. If like the dad wasn't one of the main characters, it was like, oh, that's Pops. Like that was like kind of the the standard. I can't think of any others right now, but I feel like I don't know. I just feel like that's the case.
It feels truthy, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, welcome to 8-Bit Suplex, your Hanna-Barbera podcast.
Yeah.
I will tell you, that would be a fun podcast to do. I do love Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and I will say they are, some of them, more difficult to watch with 20/20 lenses, because there is some insensitive material. But that to say, what is not insensitive to say is that we had a pretty good week in Impact Wrestling. Of course, we have Final Resolution, which we'll review here at the top. And we also had a really, really huge kind of news-breaking moment on this week's edition of Impact Wrestling with as it pertains to Kenny Omega. And, of course, Don Callis. Can't leave out Don Callis. As Kenny has not done for the past couple of weeks, even going on different radio shows. Don Callis has done a lot of media recently. He's building up a lot of heat with the marks, Dan.
Yeah, well, he's a consummate worker. He's been doing this a long time, so he knows how to stick it in and break it off.
He does. Don Callis is proof that kayfabe may not be dead all the way. He's given it some life. I've really enjoyed just about everything they've done. I think everything's a hit, and we'll get into that probably more towards the end of reviewing this week's episode of Impact. But let's talk about Final Resolution, which is of course the Impact Plus special event of the month of December. I've been really enjoying having these extra once a month shows, kind of a mini pay-per-view. They're not given as much importance as the quarterlies, which kind of feels like almost like a WWE-ish kind of model when they were doing, the once a month on the network. I think for a while they had more than once a month when they were doing separate brand pay-per-views, which was too much. So, but I think
Yeah, it's
if you,
every 2 weeks a lot of
yeah,
times. Yeah.
I mean, and for those of us that like to get together and watch wrestling, of course, pre-pandemic, and some during pandemic, but also very socially responsible watching. Getting together every 2 weeks, it was just, I mean, it was undoable. So you had to pick and choose. So you're going to watch the SmackDown one with your buddies, you're the wrong one. But
Right.
here, Impact, of course, does not have a brand split because Explosion is not a big enough show to to warrant a separate roster. And Impact, if you split up their roster, I think would not have enough really necessarily for one show. But that say, since they brought them back, I've really enjoyed having just that extra once a month just to go, okay, yeah, I'll watch this. And it was interesting, Dan, because this Saturday was like the busiest night in wrestling in a long time for your
Yeah.
major your major players.
It
Um,
just kind of came out of nowhere too. It was just
it
like all of
really
a
kind of
sudden, like,
did.
oh, you got this, you got that, you got that.
Right, and I think obviously in a lot of ways we have Kenny Omega to thank for that, because Kenny Omega does, of course, make an appearance at Final Resolution, hanging out with his former buddy in the Bullet Club, Carl Anderson. Lots of references to Bullet Club over the past couple of weeks.
Hmm.
Really trying to get Carl Anderson going, almost seemingly as a single, but then of course Doc Gallows gets kind of involved this week. And then Kenny Omega was also defending the AAA championship on YouTube. So it's you have to kind of decide which one you think was live. Obviously, it was not the Impact one because Impact also had two other talents on other shows at the exact same time this was airing, in TJP and Chris Bay, who were on the Final Resolution card as well as the Super J Cup.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it was crazy. I haven't like flipped around that much between different internet sites to watch wrestling in a long time.
right. It was very reminiscent of the days, especially between Nitro and Raw, right?
Yeah,
Like this match
exactly.
isn't really interesting me, so I'm gonna flip over here. So I watched the entire Impact card after watching some of the AAA Mania card, um, and then I didn't catch the Super J Cup yet. Did you watch any of the Super J Cup, Dan?
I waited till the next day to watch it because I knew it was taped, and I watched it Sunday morning, and it was definitely the weakest of the three shows to me, but
Okay.
it was okay.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Of course, that was none of the Impact talent won that the Super J Cup. Of course, I believe it was El Phantasmo winning it for the second time in a row because
Yeah.
that's a trophy that he wins. So,
Yep.
no disrespect, of course, to ELP. I enjoy a moonsault back rake as much as the next guy. So kudos to him, and then of course kudos to Kenny Omega for having a fantastic match with Laredo Kid and retaining that championship. That championship belt hasn't made an appearance on Impact Wrestling, which I think is interesting because he's talked about collecting belts and how this is what he's going to be doing now, is going around collecting belts.
Right.
But he's only brought the AEW. I'm sure it's probably some kind of, AAA doesn't want their belt on Access TV or something. There's got to be some kind of, something
Yeah, but
going on there.
they might have the cartels against him. Who knows? With the Mexican with the Mexican promotions. But I mean, they're pretty liberal down there with like music rights and stuff like that. So you'd think that'd be like fair game. Like, oh yeah, whatever, just talk about our belt and maybe people will watch us. But who knows what's going on behind the scenes
Yeah,
with
I
this
mean,
stuff? It's
it
all over the
couldn't
place.
hurt. Yeah, it couldn't hurt. And also, I mean, they do mention, of course, Taya is still their women's champion, I believe. So
Right.
there's a lot of weird kind of, the wrestling business is still the wrestling business at the end of the day.
But also, they don't really care about the belts like down there,
They
like we
don't.
do up here.
Right. Yeah, they're to say that Mexico is not belt marks is, to say that they are, that'd be probably an understatement. But so sorry, brief interruption
So when
there.
I was
I had some
watching it
packages
Saturday
being
night,
delivered.
one of the things I thought about was I'd like to have a wrestling red zone channel for nights like that, right?
There you go.
just a host, and like, all right, now we're gonna go to this main event, and then we're gonna go over to this, and this one's getting heated up over here. Let's go here right now.
Right. Oh, we
That would
might have
help
a
me
hot
out.
tag
And
coming in
it's,
here. We're going to switch over to Impact.
yeah,
Absolutely. So, yeah, and I do apologize for that brief lapse in audio on my end. We're moving packages around here. It is Christmas coming up, so we got some packages delivered to the house for the kids. So, my wife had to bring some into the room that I'm recording in. So just if you hear a little bit of quietness there, that's why. But yeah, so let's get into this final resolution card here. It was a bigger card than I expected. It did have 9 matches on it. I don't believe any of the other ones have gone that many matches, but they all had a pretty decent length to them also, which I found pretty interesting. It's almost like Impact realized they'd have more people watching, so of course they decided that they were going to be, throwing out more matches, more talent, just so that everyone can kind of see what they have to offer. Is that kind
right.
of the vibe you were getting to, Dan?
Yeah, it seemed like they wanted to, showcase more than just a couple of people. Let them show their stuff out there, which I appreciate. As a watcher of Impact, I want to see good wrestling. I don't necessarily want to see like 30-second squash matches all night. So
Sure.
I enjoyed it.
Especially on your monthly special, you want to have good matches. And kicking off the show, in case you haven't heard about this guy, is a guy named Tommy Dreamer. He was in an old school rules match against Larry D. Now, on top of this being an old school rules match, it also was a match that determined whether or not Larry D would go to jail for the attempted murder of Johnny Bravo. So if Larry D wins, he walks away a free man. If Tommy Dreamer wins, Larry D is off to prison. This went 11 minutes 42 seconds, which is a longer match than I expected. And I had predicted here with Sandy, and Sandy had agreed going into this, that the only way that this story continues is if Tommy Dreamer wins. And
Right.
Tommy Dreamer wins.
Yeah.
So
wrestling justice, right? Like this is probably the goofiest part of the night. I'm glad they got it out of the way at the beginning.
well, there was
But,
a slightly more goofy a match, if you ask me, and that's Hernandez and Follow By. We'll get into that in a little bit.
yeah, we'll get there.
But yeah, I mean, Tommy continues to work his tail off. I mean, truthfully, Larry D, he's looking a lot better. He's lost a lot of weight, just like AC Romero has.
Right.
Some really good action back and forth. Some pretty brutal, AC tries to get involved and goes to a corner table with a splash. Man, that's just got to be painful. I know it's probably, a little bit of a gimmick table, but, there's still fragments of wood, and he's got a lot of places that fragments of wood can stick.
It's a lot of canvas for that art, right?
Exactly. So, pretty good match there. I was happy to see Tommy pick up a win. He doesn't get very many of those these days, and then let's be honest, he doesn't need them. But
It continues the story. So, here's my thing about it, and since I'll bring it up now because it doesn't. Did they even mention it in Impact this week? That Larry D was in jail? I don't remember hearing anything about it.
No, I don't think they did.
I was kind of surprised at that. Like
they did release photos from a photo shoot of him in an orange jumpsuit, with the official from the official Impact photography, with the water stamp and everything in the corner, which is kind of silly.
Is that the same jail that Eric Young was, cutting those vignettes in?
Well, we might find out. I mean, hey, maybe that's the new recruitment center for Eric Young. Maybe he picks up Larry D.
We'll talk about it later.
maybe that comes full circle. Who knows?
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that they didn't really talk a whole lot about it. So I'm interested to see where this goes. Like, is he going to break out of jail? Is somebody going to come forward and they release him, or is he just he's just going to serve 2 years? We'll see him then. Who knows?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, because he keeps on saying that he was set up, right? So if he was indeed set up, I'm sure that's probably the next part of it. storyline. But we'll see. It's not. It's to me, it's lost a little bit of steam. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they'll pick it up once the new year comes. It is worth mentioning that this week's Impact was the last Impact of the year of new content. The next 2 weeks, I believe, are holiday award shows and look backs at the year. So nothing new probably come in unless they might announce some matches for Genesis or something like that, which will be their January monthly thing. There might be some promo spots, um, but I don't think there's going to be any new matches to talk about. But a new match to talk about with a newer tag team to Impact. We have Team Sea Stars taking on Havoc and Nevaeh. Kind of billed as a tune-up match for Havoc and Nevaeh before they have to, of course, go on and face Jordan Grace and Jazz in the Knockouts Tag Team Tournament. I was happy to see Team Sea Stars get another crack at this, Dan. I thought they had a pretty decent showing in the tournament. And I think they got a little bit of a future here in Impact if they're able to sign them.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I've seen better out of them than this match, but it was okay. I mean, I'm gonna say this a couple of times tonight. This wasn't like probably the best showing that these people could have put on. Not very memorable, but I know they're capable of better, and I hope to see more of them in Impact later.
I think we've seen this somewhat with Havoc and Nevaeh. They're not going to carry a match. So unless the other tag team can really take that match further, I think it suffers. Just because Havoc and Nevaeh have not a knock on them. They have a little bit more of a limited move set. Um,
Right.
they're not flying. They're not doing anything. And not that everyone has to fly, but they're not doing anything necessarily out of the box, right? So for me, Team Sea Stars, it was good to get them on the card. It went a little bit longer than I expected because I expected, since Havoc and Nevaeh, of course, moved on in the tournament and Team Sea Stars did not, I expected to be maybe closer to like 3 minutes. This thing goes over 8 minutes. So probably a little long. But good to see, of course, Ashley Vox and Delmi XO, Team Sea Stars. I enjoy their nautical puns, and I really actually do like their entrance where they hook the cameraman with their fishing pole and reel him in. That I think is pretty cool. So I'd like to see more of them.
Definitely.
Next, we have the team, and this is an intergender tag match of Caleb with a K and Tennille Dashwood taking on the team of Eddie and Alicia Edwards. Um, I had predicted on this podcast, you can go back and listen to it. I said there's no reason for Caleb with a K and Tennille to win this match, but they will, and they did. And it really only serves to further the storyline, of course, of Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan. But before you get that far, I actually thought this was a pretty decent match.
Yeah, it was a step up from the last tag match. I think Tennille Dashwood's been kind of underutilized so far. They've had her on, but I feel like she needs to get the rocket strapped to her. She's a big name.
Mhm.
I know she can do better than what they've allowed her to do so far. I think she's got big things ahead for her on Impact.
Absolutely. And I think you're right.
I'd like to
And
see more.
I'll say this is that when we talk about her match from Tuesday night, I think she had a much better match Tuesday night than she did at Final Resolution. And that may just be because it wasn't, the intergender tag thing and whatnot. There was one really funny spot where Eddie goes to hit Tennille with a lariat, and then Caleb tries to dive in front of him to like take the blow, and Eddie just stops, and Caleb just flies through the air and just crashes and burns. Pretty funny comedy spot. But people forget that Caleb with a K, of course, is a professional wrestler as well. And I thought he was bumping all over the place for Eddie. So I'd like to, I might want to see more Caleb with a K, Dan.
Maybe as a wrestler.
Sure,
he's,
sure.
he's got a pretty annoying personality, which that's exactly what he needs to be. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Like he could be. He's the perfect chicken shit heel, so to speak, as far as that goes. Um, but yeah, good match. Almost 9 minutes. They really let it go. And of course, Sammy Callahan gets involved at the end, causes a
Mm,
distraction, and
yeah.
you know, Caleb and Tenille get the win. Moving on, we have the singles match between Hernandez and Falaba. And I say this one was a bit goofier, and not just because of the competitors. Actually think both guys, put on a pretty good match. But we have special referee Kiera Hogan and special ring announcer Tasha Steeles. Of course, we know Tasha Steeles is in possession in her fanny pack of the roll of money that Hernandez has from arm wrestling. Hernandez gets the win here over Falaba. Hernandez can still kind of go. I mean, they used him a bit more a few years ago, but I wouldn't mind if they used him a bit more in the ring, and that may be his choice to not do as much, because he is getting up there. But what'd you think here, Dan?
I'll be honest, I didn't see most of this match. This match and the
Fair.
next one, I had switched over to AAA, and I also had a lot of stuff going on here at the house. So I'll trust your judgment on this one and the next one.
Okay. So what I heard is Josh is 100% right, and you know what? We'll go with that.
I'll rubber stamp that.
But of course, Hernandez wins, and of course the stipulation was that whoever won gets the money back. Hernandez wins, asks Tasha Steeles for the money, and she can't find it in her fanny pack. She has no idea where it is, and which kind of spooks Kiera Hogan, and like everyone's like, oh, they must be planning something. But nobody knows where the money is at that point, and we move on to the next match, which of course is Eric Young with Joe Doring, and he is taking on Rhino. There is not much to say about the actual match. Rhino gets some good offense in. Joe Doring at one point tries to get in the ring, and Rhino kicks the ropes and does the old the low blow that way, right? The legal low blow by kicking the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, and I'm sure I'll be corrected on this. After the match, of course, we get the Deaners coming out, and Cody Deaner, of course, screaming about not being a no one. And then I believe, and God, it's been a week, and I could be mistaken, at some point, either now or I don't think it happened on the next Impact. Pretty sure it's on this show. Because, like I said, God, Christmas,
I'm
kids,
pretty
seeing
sure it
Santa
was
Claus.
this episode. I know what you're talking about here. Yeah.
So Cody Deaner turns around and clocks Cousin Jake with Eric Young's hockey mask, thus aligning himself, it seems, with Eric Young. So we will see where that goes. I think Cody Deaner is a character that needs something, and I think being put with a guy that knows his character well and plays it really well, and Eric Young can really help Cody Deaner. So I know you didn't see the match, Dan, but what's kind of your thoughts? And we're not necessarily going to talk about it when we talk about the next episode of Impact. There was a video package that showed Eric Young in the prison, of course, which I always assumed was the prison of his mind, somewhat of a metaphorical showing, but it seems to be a real physical place. Maybe he lives there. I don't know, but but he has.
I guess when we see Larry D, we'll know for sure, right?
We'll know for sure. We'll know for sure. But we see Cody Deaner there. So do you think this is the right move to basically split the Deaners and then try and do something else with Cody?
I do. I would like to see Eric Young in a stable. I thought he did pretty well with Sanity in WWE as the leader of that. I feel like he would be a great. The only thing I would say that might be a negative towards it, it seems like with the video package in the next episode of Impact. It seems like they were going with the cult leader type gimmick. I'm kind of sick of cult leaders in wrestling right now.
Yeah, I mean, the one benefit, of course, is that presently the Exalted One is off of TV, Mr. Brody Lee, seemingly
Right.
with an injury. So there's no competing with that presently. But yeah, if
Right.
Eric Young turns into this cult leader kind of
Yeah, I
faction
don't want
thing,
another Wyatt family. I don't want another Dark Order.
I've been
But if he
told though,
if he
Dan,
just creates like a gang of badasses that beat the
oh
crap out of
sure,
everybody, that I'm
then
all
that
for.
would be a great heel stable. But I was going to note that Bray Wyatt is in fact a genius. I've been told. So maybe we needed another Wyatt family.
Footage not found. Okay. No, but I think it's good for the Deaners to break up. They're just a generic redneck tag team before. How many times have we seen that in wrestling? It's just bland and gross.
Who
I
was the
feel like
last generic redneck wrestler to get over?
generic redneck. Oh God.
And I'm not talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course, because he was far
No,
from generic. So outside of that,
I can't think of one.
they pretty much, if you have, I mean, you could almost call Hacksaw Jim Duggan one, but I mean,
Kinda.
he at least had a 2x4. So,
Hillbilly Jim, maybe going
I,
back, way back. I don't know. I mean,
so
it's never
listen,
been a good gimmick.
no, it doesn't really work well
The
on a
Godwins.
national. It doesn't work well on a national stage. It probably is
No.
great for Mid-South wrestling. Um, or the old NWA territory days. But
Maybe Beer Money, right? They were kind of that
they
way,
kind of, yeah, okay,
and they got over.
maybe beer money.
So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Maybe
I
a
would
little
say.
bit there.
But yeah, I'd like to see them in a group. Joe Doring. I don't know if they've announced when he's actually going to wrestle, but I want to see him. I've
Yeah,
heard he was kind of a badass over in Japan, and let's see some of that over here in Impact, right?
yeah. I mean, he was All Japan Grand Slam champion or whatever they call it. I'm not. I've never watched a single bit of All Japan, but of course, friend of the podcast, friend of the network, Zach Porter, uh, was over the moon excited when Impact signed him, and he doesn't watch Impact at all. And so most of the world is tuning into Impact to see what Kenny Omega does. Zach is tuning in to see what Joe Doring is doing.
Well, Joe
Which,
Doring's a scary looking dude, so I'd like to see what he can do in the ring, right?
yeah, when he does these beatdowns, they are pretty intense. So
Yeah.
I would like to see some of that translate to an actual match. I'm with you there. But we got to move on to the next match, which is, of course, the final Defeat Rohit challenge of the year. Now, it was teased by TJP the Tuesday prior to Final Resolution that, he's like, hey, man, good luck in your final challenge of the year. And Rohit's like, oh, it won't be you. And then, of course, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Of course, it was going to be TJP. But, of course, remembering that TJP lost to Rohit Raju, which cost him the ability for TJP to challenge for the X Division title as long as Rohit Raju held it. Now, we teased it with Suicide a few weeks ago. Maybe that's an angle that TJP could go. But no, we actually get Manic to answer the call of Rohit Raju for this challenge. And right away, the announcer's like, yeah, dude, that's TJP. What's going on here? Like,
He didn't
he's
even
got
cover up his tattoos on his
no
arms. Like he was
same exact
just
tattoo.
the
Listen,
sleeves full out. Right?
when you have sleeves, it becomes a harder thing to hide. So his full arm sleeves are there. He's wearing his Lakers wristbands, which of course, TJP is a noted Lakers fan. Um,
Right.
and of course, the moveset is basically the same moves. He does it with a little bit of a different style, a little bit more kind of like superhero stance kind of stuff. Like he kind of goes down and squats and does the one arm back, kind of like Spider-Man pose. But I really enjoyed the heck out of this match. I really did.
This was probably the second best match of the night. I mean, obviously, say what you will about TJP as a person. The guy can go in the ring. Rohit
He can.
Raju is good in the ring. Like The X division with Impact isn't like what it used to be, but these guys can still put on bangers
Right.
on shows. So
I mean,
yeah, I liked it.
here's the thing is that, when we talk about the X division now, and there's some great guys there, like you mentioned, TJP, Rohit Raju, Chris Bay, Willie Mack, I mean, basically, of course, everyone can qualify, so to speak, for the X division. But the guys that are constantly in the mix of that right now, listen, it's never going to be AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, Christopher Daniels, Frankie. I can go on and on and on and on. That's way long gone. But with what they got now, they have, in my mind, the majority of their best workers are in that X division. Because when you tune into an X division match, you're going to get an awesome match, and that's kind of, that's what we're seeing here. And
Right.
yeah, I agree. I mean, TJP is a really good wrestler. He's really talented. So having hit the title on him makes a lot of sense, especially since that's a title that's defended more than the World Championship is. So I'm excited to see kind of what comes next out of his title reign as Manic.
Well,
of
he
course.
doesn't have it. Manic has it, so
Well,
it'll
that's
be
true.
interesting to
That's
see what
true.
Manic does.
That's true. Very good point out of you. Very good point.
This reminds me a lot of the Mr. America gimmick at the end of Hogan's run. Like,
Right.
like just hit people with a leg drop and then like pull his mask up after the cameras were off and like shh, like come on, dude. It's like it's intentionally badly showing that it's him. So, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, at least even like TJP's social media presence, he's not pretending that Manic is a different person. So,
Right.
it's like this hidden secret in plain sight that Scott D'Amore himself endorsed when he said to TJP, "Nobody named TJP can win this." Nudge, nudge,
Right.
wink, wink. So, at least they're not trying to go as far as that Mr. America shit. I was almost gonna say who's a worse person, TJP or Terry Bollea, but it's still far and away Terry Bollea. So that's not a fair question to ask. If the question is who's worse, Terry Bollea or fill in the blank, it's always going to be Terry Bollea unless you like start talking about historically horrible figures and stuff like that. I mean, Hitler versus Hulk Hogan. I mean, obviously
This
Hitler's
show's
worse.
taking a turn.
Obviously Hitler's worse. And listen, I'm just making points here. I'm trying. Listen, we got to drive the ratings here.
Yeah, have heat with Hogan.
I've had heat with Terry Bollea for a long time. Okay,
You're gonna see him at the Panera Bread here in town. And
yeah, and I'll call him Terry to his face again and get him real pissed off again. Spoiler alert: Terry Bollea still believes he's Hulk Hogan outside of the ring. If you call him Terry, you better be Eric Bischoff, and that's about it. Because he will not answer, and if you insist on calling him Terry multiple times, he will get angry. That's just
see how he likes that.
I don't think he will. But who knows? Who knows? Anyways, moving on. We have the Impact Knockouts title match, which of course was made the week prior, the lead up here after Rosemary and Taya defeat Deonna and Kimberly in the tag team tournament. We have Deonna Purrazzo, of course, accompanied to the ring by Kimberly, defending against the Demon Assassin Rosemary, accompanied to the ring by Taya. I really wish this was Taya in this match instead of Rosemary. But I thought Rosemary did fine. Deonna Purrazzo, of course, gets the win with her Gotch-style pile driver, what she calls the Cosa Nostra. Pretty good match here, Dan. I don't have a whole lot of notes, so to speak. There was some back and forth a little bit with Taya and Kimberly. I always get kind of nervous when Kimber is ringside and getting involved because for whatever reason, when she knows that she's going to have a spot, she still wears a miniskirt, and I don't really know why. But it's like, you're going to catch a super kick from Taya, don't wear the miniskirt. That's kind of my opinion.
Right.
It's not the Attitude Era, and nobody's looking for that. So, but yeah, I mean, pretty good match. Obviously, we seem to be driving towards Deonna versus Taya at Hard to Kill would be my guess. And I'm 1,000% here for that, Dan. I'm sure you are as well. Because it's no secret on this podcast that Taya might be my favorite female wrestler in the world right now. I can go back on the AAA YouTube channel and just pull up all these fantastic matches that she's had with, Redacted and, anyone else in that division, right?
Right.
So I don't know. You got anything to note here?
Not really. It was an okay match. It probably went on a little bit too long, but yeah, it's building towards Deanna Wichita, that's more of a money match for me.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a little bit of two contrasting styles too when you get to that match eventually, and we'll of course preview that match 110% if and when it does happen. And you're right, it is a little long. It did go over 13 minutes, which probably could have been 8 or 9. It might have been a little better.
Yeah.
But like you said, setting up lots of stuff. And then we get to the sub main event, or the co-main event almost. After a huge pep talk from, of course, Kenny Omega and Don Callis on the $1 billion bus, or as Josh Matthews refers to us. I don't think that bus is that expensive. I don't think Anthem is shelling out that much money for a bus to shoot Kenny Omega in. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on big RVs and things like that, but maybe it is a nicer $1 million RV.
I don't know about $1 million, maybe like 200K or something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a couple $100,000.
I see a lot of them down here at the trailer parks in Florida, so it can't be that expensive, right?
Well, when you live in the trailer, you don't have to worry about mortgages and things like that. You can put your big money into the RV. That's kind of my thought. Well, I don't personally do that, and I as someone that has a wife and 2 kids, I'm not allowed to do something like that, even if I wanted to. But if that's what you want, that's what you want. You just, hey, you do you. But let's say he basically tells Carl Anderson, like, and they've been hammering this up a lot, that Carl Anderson was the 2012 G1 finalist. Notice he lost that final, of course, to I believe it was Tanahashi, or was it Okada? It was either Tanahashi or Okada. I believe it was Tanahashi. And they keep bringing that up constantly. Dude, you were the 2012 G1 finalist. Like, this guy shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. And of course, it does take a little bit more than 5 minutes for him to get through Ethan Page. It does take about 13 minutes. And I just looked it up because I knew I was going to be called out on this. It was, of course, Kazuchika Okada that won the 2012 G1 over Carl Anderson. So,
I mean, he's no slouch, so it's not like
he's definitely not. He's definitely not. Like here's what I think, and this will be a small Good Brothers tangent, if you'll allow me the endeavor.
It's your show, man. Go for it.
Well, it's only partly my show. Missing Sandy, of course.
Well, tonight, how about that? It's your show.
Well, no, it's still partly yours. So the problem with the Good Brothers, especially Carl Anderson, is that they spent those years in WWE really phoning it in, and really not have. I mean, I struggle to think of a good match that they had. Like, the only match that I can ever think of that they were in that I really enjoyed was at WrestleMania 33 when the Hardys came back, and that had nothing to do with them, and everything to do
they were in that.
Exactly. I mean, it had everything to do with the fact that, of course, Matt and Jeff came back, right? I mean, one of the biggest pops in recent WrestleMania, history. But I really feel like for them, they just got stuck in such a rut, and they're trying to do their different things and come out of it, and we forget that these guys really were good wrestlers, and that's how they got signed to WWE. And Carl Anderson especially, he still holds records in New Japan for the longest tag team title reigns. Of course, that was with Matt Bloom, not with Doc Gallows. But I really feel like Impact at least is showing that this Carl Anderson still exists when they put him in a singles match. And I feel like when Doc Gallows gets out there against another big guy, he shows how much better than he is than the big guys. But he can't necessarily go with the small guys as much. But I really enjoy seeing Carl Anderson wrestle. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And what and I wish that their time in WWE almost never happened, just because I think it's making it harder to appreciate what they do and what they've done in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Like you said, I you remembered at least one match that was memorable for them. I can't remember anything, and I didn't, I saw them live a few times too, and I can't remember hardly anything about their run other than, they seconded AJ a lot, but they didn't really do much except for cash checks. I mean,
And
to put
they
it
catch big
honestly.
ones. I mean
Yeah.
WWE, and hey, you know what?
I don't fault them
Kudos.
for that at all,
No,
right? Like,
absolutely not.
take Vince's money every chance you get.
He's got plenty of it, so please take it. And
But
yeah, I mean, they were multiple time tag champions, in and everywhere they've gone. So these, I mean, there's a reason why these guys keep getting jobs and booked, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
not because they're pretty. It's not because, it's not because they're drawing, the ladies to the screen. It's because they can wrestle. I mean, let's be honest. And I say, I don't want to say don't have them wrestle together, because obviously they're the tag champs in Impact right now. But if you want to keep throwing out these, singles matches between tag teams, I wouldn't be mad at it. It's kind of what I'm getting at.
yeah, yeah.
But
I think they've still got some mileage left. Um, Obviously, they were never utilized right in WWE. That's common for a lot of people. I think they kind of feel like they need to show people that they still got it.
yeah,
Maybe with pairing up with Kenny again, maybe that'll get the motor running on them, and
well,
they can
yeah.
be able
Hey,
to
let's not bury
show
the
some
lead
good
too
stuff.
far here, Dan. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're well aware of what's going on, and we'll talk about that in depth.
Right.
Because it will, not that we're going to preview Hard to Kill now, because we're still 6 weeks away from it. But we will definitely talk about Hard to Kill later on in the pod. But yeah, and we spent all that time talking about Carl Anderson. I do want to point out Ethan Page. He's really gotten good this year. I think working with Josh Alexander has done absolutely wonders, and really for Josh Alexander too, the other way. The North are really, 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 really good. They have the longest reign in Impact Tag Team Champion history, and with good reason. Ethan Page, of course, there's a lot of talks about his contract supposedly being up at the end of the year. We'll see what happens there. Um, Really good match. And then I believe it was Tuesday night. Yeah, Tuesday night they teased his alter ego, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
Which of course he claims isn't him. But yeah, I mean, Carl Anderson goes out and he beats Ethan Page, which means that they do not get a chance at the tag team titles, which is kind of like the caveat. And I thought maybe going into it that Ethan Page would pick up the win and then they would fail, to win the tag team titles, and then that would be kind of how he exits, if he's going to exit. So, but we'll see
Right.
what happens. Maybe he sticks around. Josh Alexander has at least another 6 months or so left on his contract, maybe longer. So if Ethan Page leaves, that leaves Alexander by himself. Maybe we see a Josh Alexander X Division title run. That'd be pretty sweet. I wouldn't be mad at that. But without further ado, on our final resolution review, we have the Impact World Title match between the defending Rich Swann and the challenger Chris Bay. This match went 20 minutes, which it might be the longest Impact match that I've watched this year. But Dan, I thought this thing was pretty damn good.
I thought it was okay. It was
Really? Okay.
it was just, to me. I mean, I've seen better out of both these guys. I guess my expectations for it were higher.
I gotcha.
Because these guys had a lot of eyeballs on them from all the people tuning into Impact now. We didn't talk about it earlier, but I think Impact somehow screwed this thing up, so they ended up giving away Final Resolution for free, right? Like it wasn't
Right.
even a pay-per-view by the end of the night. So they knew a lot of people would be watching. So I guess I was kind of disappointed by that. It wasn't bad, right?
Hmm.
But I was expecting more. I'll say that.
I gotcha. I will say this is probably the highest rated match I've seen from Impact on Cage Match. It has a 7.29, which is pretty good, um,
Yeah.
especially for Impact ratings, because we talked before going on the air, and Impact ratings on Cage Match, because if you hold them up to, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. Impact does not have the same style of wrestling show that AEW does. And so if you're rating comparing them as apples to apples, AEW is going to have the better wrestling show, period.
Right.
But if you look at Impact as doing what Impact's trying to do, they're very successful at it. They're telling the different stories, they're doing the comedy angles, the different things like that. And if you look at AEW, it's different shows. NXT is a different show. New Japan's a different style of a show, right? So to me, if you're doing an apples to apples comparison, it's never going to translate well. But saying all that to say, a 7.29 on Cage Match is nothing to sniff at for an Impact match. And like I said, Rich Swann and Chris Bay are both really talented wrestlers. Of course, it was one of Chris Bay's two matches on the night, the other one being in the Super J Cup. But I really like their opening sequence that they threw out. Lots of acrobatics, lots of really athletic moves. But yeah, I mean, Rich Swann, of course, defeats Chris Bay, retains the Impact World Title match. He looks like could be, kind of pushing towards wrestling against Moose at some point, possibly at Hard to Kill. Um, I thought it was a pretty
Well,
good
Moose
match.
came out at the end of this, right?
Yes.
Didn't he hand him his title at the end, kind of
He did.
hinting that they were gonna like have a match at some point?
Yes, so that is kind of where they're pointing to. Of course, Moose has a match at Genesis against Willie Mack,
Right.
which is an I Quit match, and which was booked because, and this went down Tuesday. The tag match from the previous Tuesday, was a referee stoppage, I believe, or maybe two matches ago. He's had a referee stoppage, and he's like, man, nobody tells me when I'm done. I'm going to tell you when I'm done. This is going to be an I Quit match. I don't personally like I Quit matches typically, especially in a year that we had John Moxley and Eddie Kingston have a pretty damn good one.
Right.
I guess technically it will be a different year. It will be 2021. Thank God we're almost done with 2020. But yeah, it's one of those things, right? We talked about a lot in our group. When you have a tag team ladder match like AEW had, putting out a tag team ladder match in recent, with any sort of recency tied to that match, it's difficult to overcome those comparisons. So if you're going to throw out an I Quit match 2 months after John Moxley and Eddie Kingston had maybe one of the best ones in the last decade, um, I, I hope it delivers. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a
So
big fan of I Quit matches either. I never have been. I would have much preferred like a last man standing match or something of that nature. But
yes.
um, I don't know where they're going with Moose, right? Are they going to have him challenge Rich after this whole Kenny Omega thing is up? Or, I mean,
Right.
it's kind of up in the air. I'm not sure what's going on. So I guess
Yeah.
that's why I'll be tuning in, right?
Exactly. They're doing a great job of making sure people keep coming back. They're not giving a whole lot of information each time. Um, so, we'll see kind of what happens. That's it for Final Resolution. I thought overall, pretty decent show. It wasn't their strongest monthly special, but I think there was a lot to like about it, and a lot to build off of as we kind of look towards next year with Genesis and Hard to Kill.
Yeah, it was an okay show. Like I said earlier, on a couple of these matches, I was kind of expecting more from them, but there really wasn't a whole lot in there that I just hated. So, I mean, that's better than some shows I've seen this year. I'll say that.
I will not disagree with that statement. I, I agree. So real quick, we'll go through this week's Impact. Of course, we alluded to this before. Tennille Dashwood gets a singles match against Alicia Edwards. Of course, they're both accompanied to the ring by their respective tag team partners. Of course, Tennille Dashwood with Caleb with a K, and Alicia Edwards comes out with Eddie Edwards. Now, this match I thought showcased Tennille a bit more. And I thought that the spotlight kick, as she calls it, her shining wizard, was pretty awesome when she hits Alicia with it in this match to get the win, and kind of wins clean. That was a little bit of a distraction, but at least she does get her finishing move in to pick up the pin. Only a 5-minute match compared to the longer tag match that they had at Final Resolution. Dan, you got anything that you want to throw out here about this one?
No, like you said, it was a little better than the other match. It seemed like they were.
2 kinds of bacon and all kinds of delicious. Say hello to Donato's new Bacon Duo pizzas. 2 pizzas, each with 2 kinds of bacon. Try the new Pepperoni Bacon Duo with pepperoni, Canadian bacon, and hardwood smoked bacon. And the Chipotle Bacon Duo with Canadian bacon and Chipotle seasoned bacon. Now get $2 off a large Bacon Duo or any large pizza. Use promo code 2. Donato's. Every piece is important.
Who are you texting?
My therapist.
You text with your therapist?
Text, video chat, call. Yep.
That sounds too easy. How did you find her?
I just went to betterhelp.com/save. She's a licensed therapist and it's all online. I connect when it's convenient for me and don't waste time driving anywhere. Plus, it's affordable.
I wonder if I should try it.
It's great to talk to someone in confidence. She's helped me sort out quite a few things. And right now you save 10% off the first month when you go through betterhelp.com/save.
BetterHelp.com/save. Got it.
Starting to feature Tennille a little more. I hope they keep doing that. And then, of course, after the match, we had our good friend Sami Callihan injecting himself into the show.
Yeah. So, which looks like we're going to have a no DQ match between Eddie and Sami at Hard to Kill. I believe they said it was going to be for Hard to Kill. So he basically said, like, hey, man, go home, enjoy your last holiday that you're ever going to have with your family, because, Sami is that sadistic.
He's going to murder you. Okay.
He's come pretty damn close to it a couple times. That baseball bat, of course, is, pretty risque anytime you're swinging it like Sami does.
He's been known to do some nasty things with it, so intentional or not.
Right, exactly. The or not part is the more dangerous part. So yeah, we'll see. I think Eddie and Sami, if they truly do go, no holds barred, no DQ at Hard to Kill, that has the potential to be, pretty colorful, so to speak. I'm gonna put the over under at of people bleeding at 1.5, and I'm gonna choose the over.
Yeah, there's definitely potential there to be good. There's also potential there for it to be awful. So you never really know what you're going to get with old Sami. So
and
hopefully it'll be good.
Ken Shamrock's 30-day suspension, of course, will be up by that point too. So we'll see. Because punching D'Lo Brown in the face gets you a 30-day suspension these days. Because of course it does. The next match on the card, and it is worth noting, of course, that Carl Anderson is hanging out on the bus again with Kenny Omega and Don Callis. They're really hamming it up, having a good time. Carl Anderson's just, he's basically got free reign to come and go as he pleases through the parking lot. Still pisses Rich Swann off, of course. And there's some confrontation in between, Swann and Carl Anderson, and Kenny kind of talks him into going, hey man, why don't you go take him out right now? And so he goes to do it, and then it was the Motor City Machine Guns that he had a problem with. And then Rich Swann interjects himself, and he kind of backs off, and so he goes back to hides on the bus until his main event match with Chris Sabin, who he was trying to quote unquote take his head off before the match, and he kind of cowers. So the next match on the card, of course, is our newly crowned X Division champion, Manic, taking on Chris Bay, who is accompanied to the ring by Rohit Raju. Now, he convinces Rohit Raju to come to the ring with him as a means to unmask Manic. he convinces Rohit Raju that if he takes the mask of Manik off, revealing it to be TJP, that Scott D'Amore will have no choice but to give him back his X Division championship. Rohit, of course, thinks this is a great idea, but you have to remember, of course, Chris Bay's, of course, the ultimate finesser. So he gets Rohit out there. Rohit kind of adds some distractions, and then Chris Bay is able to get Rohit Raju pissed off enough that he actually hits him, and this causes, of course, a DQ where Chris Bay defeats Manik, thus thrusting Chris Bay into the #1 challenger spot, or so we're led to believe, for the X Division Championship, leapfrogging Rohit Raju. So a little bit of an interesting, kind of a weird little twist there, Dan.
Yeah. I wasn't a big. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the interference endings on these matches, but he is the ultimate finesser, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and it's one of those things where you watch the match. It had some decent action in it. Of course, Chris Bay and TJP can both wrestle really well. Excuse me, Chris Bay and Manik. They do a pretty solid job. And yeah, it does suck to see so many of these end in an interference. But you tune in for the next week. That's what you keep coming back for. So moving right along, because I don't think we need to spend any more time, unless you got anything else you want to add about that match, Dan.
No.
Righto. So moving right along to the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Title Tournament semifinal match between Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz and Rosemary and Taya. I thought this match was excellent. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm going to get your thoughts here, Dan, first on this match.
So obviously you're going to like this match, right? Because your girl's in it.
Absolutely.
Taya.
Well, I mean, three out of four. I'm pretty excited to see on a regular basis, Dan.
Right. Here's my only issue with this match, and another distraction finish right after the last one. If you have all these new eyeballs on you, from all these people that want to see Kenny Omega and are curious as to what you got, don't keep running this distraction crap. If I want to see that, I'll watch 3 hours of Raw on Monday night. Like, come on,
Right.
We gotta have winners and losers here, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things that Sandy and I talked about last week, and you just it's difficult to constantly have this happen when you know that there's more eyeballs on it. But they recorded these matches were all already in the can before the Kenny Omega stuff even started. So with that in mind, you can go back and say, well, maybe they didn't. Well, I mean, I think they kind of knew that this was coming, so they could have done something different.
Somebody had to know, right?
Kenny
Omega didn't just show up on the doorstep and say, all right, I'm taking over your show.
Right.
Starting
now. Exactly. Bare minimum, Scott D'Amore and Don Callis knew what was happening. Right. Bare minimum. So for me, you could have at least not had these next to each other on the card.
Yeah.
I mean, and in reality, only the first match and the last match actually have a finish.
Right.
So it's one of those things. It's tough to have a lead into next week when there isn't a next week. It's a lead into 3 weeks from now. And this is kind of the first time I've since doing this podcast, I've been a little frustrated with Impact's programming because I feel like they could have done more with this night. Of course, the night is saved at the end quite a bit, but the lead up to it could have been better. But I thought the match itself was really good. Of course, as you alluded to it, Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly come out and interfere with the match, causing Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz to, of course, pick up the victory. Kiera Hogan hits, I believe, Taya with the bridging fisherman's neckbreaker, which is, she does that move very well. So it's okay that was the finish. I would have liked to see Taya and Rosemary versus like Jordan and Jazz for the finals, that would have been like my ideal matchup. Because I want to see more Jordan and Taya. It's kind of what it kind of boils down to.
Right.
No, and shout outs to Jazz, who of course follows me on Twitter now. I'm kind of a big deal, Dan. Tommy Dreamer messages me on Twitter. Jazz follows me. I mean, hey, we're coming up.
Wow, you're getting in there.
Yeah, and listen, a clip of you, Barry and Ken Shamrock is on TikTok at over 152 views.
Oh,
So,
wow. Oh, great. He's going to come and kick my ass.
well, I think you could outrun him. I think you could outrun him.
I don't know. So
That's a fair point.
So with this distraction finish, like, I mean, I see they're building towards Taya and Deanna, which is great, right? But why couldn't you just have Rosemary take the pin here, and then Deanna come out and like call them suckers for losing, right? Why do we have to do this distraction stuff? I know we talked about it, but it frustrates me.
With the way you're doing it sounds better. And I think the only reason why you have Taya take the pin is because she is now personally felt that loss because of what happened with Deanna. And so now she's pissed at Deanna because, Taya Valkyrie doesn't take pins, right? I mean, that's just that's my thought about it. But not that she doesn't. Taya's obviously a very gracious worker, and everyone seems to love working with her, or they wouldn't wear her clothing brand everywhere on Instagram, which,
Right.
Wera Loca seems to be like the most popular clothing brand amongst wrestlers these days outside of Roots of Fight. So pretty cool stuff, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a very big fashion guy. I know fashion probably gets talked about in your house a little bit, but not so much.
Not by
here.
me. I don't know anything.
I understand. So
wrestling shirts and basketball shorts. That's the fashion I talk about. So
right, exactly. We're both sitting here, of course, wearing wrestling shirts. Mine and my super faded TNA era AJ Styles logoed shirt, and of course, you're in the shirt of one local wrestler, Ron Bass Jr. Big shout out to Ron Bass Jr., of course, and all the local indie guys trying to get booked for what shows there are out there right now. Tough time for indie wrestlers. So definitely, if you know an indie wrestler and they have some merch that you can buy, it's a great way to support them, especially during this time where they can't get as many bookings as they normally could. So that's my brief PSA for supporting your local independent wrestlers. The next match goes real short and very brief. There's a little bit of a confrontation because Brian Myers tries to angle himself as the new tag partner for Josh Alexander because they're pushing this split between the North. Alexander says, you know what, man? No, we're going to go wrestle right now. Like, let's go fight. And so the most professional wrestler, Brian Myers, takes on the walking weapon, Josh Alexander. 3 minutes, 31 seconds. Brian Myers slams Ethan Page into the ring post, which looked extremely hard. And a little bit maybe caught too much of Ethan's face. But then, of course, before Brian Myers is able to defeat Josh Alexander, he gets assaulted by Karate Man. Now, Dan, I don't know about you. Karate Man, to me, feels a lot like Johnny Karate from Parks and Recreation, which, of course, was Chris Pratt's character. Andy Dwyer, of course, hosts a children's television show in which one of the characters he does is Johnny Karate and does this very, like, big, over-the-top, like, hey, kids, let's do some karate. And then Karate Man kind of feels like that to me in a way, because Ethan Page kind of carries that same energy.
Right.
Oh, sorry, it's not Ethan Page. It's Karate Man. But we'll see what happens with Karate Man, Ethan Page, Josh Alexander. This match didn't really do anything for anybody other than to just get a Karate Man pop, I guess, which would have been great for a live audience. But for a empty Impact Zone, I think it's kind of a wasted segment on a night that they were going to have a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah, I think it's just mostly to continue the story of the North breaking up. I mean, it's probably going to lead to a match between these two, and then Alexander beats Karate Man or Ethan Page or both. Who knows?
Right.
Depending on his contract situation. This was a very skippable moment.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily even need to skip it. It's over in 3.5 minutes, so it's not a
Hey
big
man,
deal.
I only have a certain number of minutes on this earth. If I
I,
can save
I
3 by
get it,
skipping Karate Man, I'll take it.
and you know what? I want more Karate Man, so that's the difference between you and me. Um,
You can have all my Karate Man minutes anytime you want, buddy.
will do. But I do want to talk about, of course, our main event here. The Machine Gun Carl Anderson takes on Chris Sabin of the Motor City Machine Guns. This match ruled. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I love Chris Sabin a lot. Like, I want more Chris Sabin the way I want more Carl Anderson, and that's not a knock on Alex Shelley, because I want more Alex Shelley too. Um, but the Machine Guns, I mean, listen, all three of them, as it turns out, the Machine Gun Carl Anderson and the Motor City Machine Guns, these guys are awesome. I mean, they've been around forever. They know how to work. They're excellent in the ring. Everything just flows well. They're selling for each other. I mean, to me, when you put a TV main event out there, that's what it should look like. So
Right.
I really enjoyed this match quite a bit. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, this match was great. It was definitely worthy of main event. These guys can obviously go. They're both they're real professional wrestlers. Not taking away from Brian Myers, but yeah, these
Right. Well,
guys.
he's the most
I mean,
professional
we've
wrestler.
been watching these guys wrestle for years. We know they can do it. These guys knew they had a lot of eyeballs on them, especially with everybody was going to be tuning in to the end of the show to see how it ended with Kenny Omega and everything.
Right.
And I think they paid it off.
Yeah, they really did. It's one of those things you tease this Kenny Omega stuff over and over and over again, right? We might learn something new. We might learn something new. And you know that they like to put that on last. They kind of made that known. And so yeah, your main event is going to get a lot of eyeballs. Last week, we had the tag match between Moose and Chris Bay versus um, Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Excellent match, right leading up into the Kenny Omega segment.
Right.
And then again, another excellent main event leading into this. And then a lot of awesomeness happens next in the shakeout of this match. Going backstage, Carl Anderson goes backstage, or he starts to, and Rich Swann comes out, and there's some kind of pushing and shoving, kind of going back towards the back, and out of the blue, Kenny Omega just comes and just absolutely assaults the piss out of Rich Swann. I mean, he cracks him over the head with something. I didn't catch exactly what it was in the first watch. I thought
I
it
think
was
it
the
was the
title
belt,
belt.
wasn't it?
I think he hit him
I'm
with
pretty
the
sure it was the
AEW
belt.
title belt, and
Yeah.
it looked like he hit him pretty good. So, a little bit working a little stiff for his old buddy Rich. But yeah, no, I mean, this segment is like, oh shit, Kenny's actually doing something physical
Yeah.
on Impact Wrestling, and up until this point, we've seen him sit on a bus.
Yeah, we finally got to the fireworks factory. It's like what everybody's been waiting 2 weeks to see, right?
Right,
He finally gets
exactly.
on there and whips the shit out of somebody. I mean, I sat up. I was like, yeah, get him,
Right,
And then now everybody's like, oh God, what's this going to lead to next, right?
right. And so we find out very quickly what happens next. As Doc Gallows reemerges back from being injured, and I don't know if he was or not, outside of kayfabe, but he emerges back, helps take out the machine guns with Carl Anderson. The three of them are standing there, and Kenny has this great idea for a main event at Hard to Kill. Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers taking on Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns. This thing is going to be incredible. I'm calling it now. Like, this is going to be, it could be the best match that Impact puts on, unless Kenny has a singles match with Rich Swann. Then that might take the cake there. But to see Kenny in the ring with all three of those guys, with Sabin, with Shelley, with Rich Swann, I'm excited about it right now, and I want to watch it right now. But I gotta wait like 6 weeks, and that's painful. Maybe
Yeah, they
4
set
weeks
it
at
up
this
really
point.
well. I think it's going to be good. I mean, we got a lot of bullet / gun stuff going on here, which is great.
Yes.
Um,
The Bullet
no,
Club versus the Machine Guns, if you will.
yeah, I know Omega's gonna like tear down the house with any of those other three guys. Carl Anderson probably hang. I'm kind of worried about old Doc getting in there with these
Yeah.
guys because none of them are like big guys like him. So we'll see what goes on there. But I've seen a lot of chatter online. I've heard some podcasts. People are like speculating on who's going to take the pin in this match and what it's going to lead to. And a lot of people are saying, uh, Kenny's going to get pinned by Rich Swann, leading to a match later on. And then other people are saying, oh no, Rich Swann's going to get pinned. I don't see either one of those happening. I mean, we've got these two tag teams in here, and one of them is the tag team champions, right? So I feel like one of the tag team champions, I don't know if it's going to be Anderson or Doc, is going to take the pin, and it's going to lead to a tag team championship match.
I'm kind of thinking that it's that no, I'm just gonna say I'm kind of agreeing with you there. I'm leaning towards either Gallows or Anderson taking the pin. I'm kind of leaning towards Anderson just because of how much they've been really funneling into how good he is. Man, you're the G1 finalist from 2012. How many times did we hear that on TV the past week? So like he's like trying to get his confidence back up. So and then maybe he loses and he starts to lose confidence, and then maybe Kenny has to whip him back into shape or something. There's something. There's a lot of things you can play with here, and this is really, I mean, we've never seen anything like this. I mean, where a tag team champion from one promotion is teaming up with the singles champion from another promotion to take on their own promotion's champion and two of the basically the number one contenders for the tag titles. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's what's great about it, right? We don't know what's going to happen. I just don't foresee Tony Khan letting Kenny Omega, his world champion, go to another show and take a pin from anybody, right? I just can't see that happening. Now, they might shock the world, and that might happen, who knows what the main thing is it's making me want to tune in and watch, and that's what they're looking for, right?
Exactly.
So I guess mission accomplished for them.
As we mentioned, Don Callis knows what he's doing, and and obviously Tony Khan does too. Let's tip the cap to Tony Khan. We don't know whose idea this was. We don't know where this came. It's probably Don Callis' idea. I think that I feel pretty comfortable saying that. But Tony Khan also is working on this, and is obviously fronting. I would imagine a considerable amount of investment into this going well. He's appeared on Access TV 2 weeks in a row now, promoting his own show. We
didn't even talk about that.
So, which is another great commercial between him and Tony Schiavone. They continue to bury the old TNA, which is great. And what I talked about with Sandy is, Impact today is okay with burying the TNA of yesterday, and they do it themselves. So to have Tony and Tony do it, and you could just say, oh, it's just another, it's another promotion trying to bury us and get heat. That saves them a little bit of that self-deprecation. But yeah, I mean, everything about this has made sense, and it, like you said, it's doing its job and getting you to tune in week after week to a wrestling show that most people have never watched. I think about, in our own group chat, and a lot of, the members of our social Suplex network are not Impact Wrestling watchers, or couldn't have even told you who was the champion 3 weeks ago. They might have had an idea, but, and I'm not just talking about our podcast hosts, but, the writers and different, people that are involved, our larger loop group chat, most of the people don't know what's going on in Impact, don't care to. Now, Kenny Omega and Don Callis have made people care about that promotion in a way that they really, I don't think, could have done it themselves. They've done a great job. I'm not knocking the promotion, but what's been coming out of it, of Don Callis and Kenny Omega being there and feeling free to use terms like Bullet Club and talk about, different things, and Omega refers to John Moxley as Dean Ambrose in one of the segments. So, I mean, just just
Right.
it's been really fun to watch. And as a wrestling fan, it's really fun to not know what the hell is going to happen. That's
Yeah.
very rare in 2020.
Yeah. I mean, we're so used to the WWE where you can see stuff coming that they plan it out years in advance, and it's never what you want, and it's just this. I mean, you've seen Raw and SmackDown. It's like the same matches every week, the same people every week, the same 6 or 7 wrestlers every week.
Right.
This is just like uncharted territory with this, and that's what's great about it. Like that's why I tuned into wrestling when I was a kid. I never knew what was going to happen next. And that's why I'm excited about this. And they've also been mentioning New Japan too, and
Right.
that now there might never be anything with New Japan, but they keep mentioning it, so everybody's like, oh, let's watch it, let's find out. Are they going to open
Yeah,
the door?
right. And I didn't watch the Super J Cup, so I may be ignorant in this. But I don't know that the Super J Cup announce team said anything about TJP and Chris Bay being from Impact Wrestling. I would imagine they must have said something about it.
I think they did. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure they did because I mean they talked about like Horace Ray Horace being from ROH.
ROH, right?
So they'll mention the other promotions on there.
Yeah. So but again, is this the backdoor way that Kenny gets to work with New Japan? Let's say you're watching Hard to Kill, 6-man's over, and out of the blue you hear Go Ace kick out across the speakers, right? Wouldn't the wrestling world lose its shit? Like if
I know I would.
If Hiroshi Tanahashi showed up on Hard to Kill, wouldn't that be insane? No.
Yeah.
The chances of that happening have got to be probably less than 1%, and that's just a fever dream. But something along those lines, is that the way that AEW and Kenny Omega get back into working with New Japan? I don't know. Don Callis seems to be the catalyst of kind of everything that's happening in wrestling outside of WWE right now. So, it's, man, like I said, it's exciting to see happen. It's exciting to not know what's coming next. And this is, I gotta imagine that Hard to Kill is going to get a tremendous amount of pay-per-view buys.
Yeah.
Because it is a traditional pay-per-view. I assume they'll keep the price at $50 like they have been for all the other Impact pay-per-views. I mean, this has got to get maybe, I don't know, probably 60 to 70% of what AEW does in buys just from Kenny Omega being on the show. So,
maybe,
which would be,
I have no idea,
right. That's probably a discussion more for like WrestleNomics.
WrestleNomics, yeah.
It feels
it's definitely
like
going to bump up from what they would have gotten without this match being announced.
Right.
This
exactly.
is making them money. This is the whole point of like the wrestling business, right?
Exactly.
Bring us marks in with their money.
Exactly. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. Sandy and I talked about the Twitch numbers last week, what they did with the first Kenny Omega show. I mean, it's just, I gotta believe that Anthem is really loving this and really loving the investment and Impact right now. And I'm sure Don Callis is. I'm sure he's collecting paychecks from multiple places. And there may be something else, like I said, there may be something else going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And maybe we see something. So, oh hi, my daughter just walked into the room. You can say hi to Mr. Dan.
Hi.
All right, go to bed. All right, love you. Hey, listen, this podcast is recorded live in front of a family audience sometimes.
Just had a run-in.
So, just had a run-in for my 3-year-old Molly, who has been watching Dynamite with me the last couple of weeks, which has been pretty cool. Not cool that she tries to do some of the moves, but cool to watch it with her. But yeah, no, like I said, real exciting stuff. This is the end of the year, obviously. We might get some information here and there. We are not going to necessarily be recording weekly over the holidays, just because I don't think anything new is coming from Impact. We are going to try and get out a video game show to kind of tide you guys over. So stay tuned for that if we're able to get that out. Obviously, with the holidays, the scheduling can become difficult, so stick around. But before Dan and I finish, I do want to go over some kind of yearly superlatives, since that's what Impact is going to be doing on their show the next couple of weeks. So Dan, I think we do this category by category here, and well, I guess let's work our way up. We have 4 kind of Impact awards that we want to get through, or hand out, I should say. Get through implies that we don't want to do it, but 4 Impact awards and then 2 video game related awards. So Dan, let's start with best comedy worker. Who was your guy or gal that you thought, really from an entertainment perspective, not necessarily from an in-ring perspective, but from an entertainment perspective, really brought it this year?
So we're talking about from when you started the show, right? We're not talking from January 1st, right?
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this would be Slammiversary when this started. So
shortly thereafter,
for
but
me,
we'll go from Slammiversary on.
okay. So for me, Heath Slater is my guy. He's pretty funny. I think he's got a great wit. The most I've laughed at wrestling in a while was when he had that video several
commercial
weeks ago.
That commercial was great.
And he had his kids coming out. I mean, DeLorean Brown made me chuckle. So yeah, he's my guy. I'm sad that he's not around right now because he's hurt. But
right, yeah, the hernia getting put on the shelf for a hernia, I'm sure, is difficult. I've not had one myself. I hope to not have one. But you could just tell he was on him, and that's an excellent choice for comedy wrestler of the year. For me, it comes down to who's the guy that every time he comes on the screen, he puts a smile on my face. Heath Slater's definitely up there. Johnny Swinger, I hate to say, is growing on me. He's had a couple of really funny lines, and calling everyone daddy and all that stuff, and he gets some chuckles out of me. For me, I got to say Tommy Dreamer. It's not just because he sent me a direct message on Twitter, which he hasn't done in a while. So Tommy, if you want to send me another one, but I really feel like every time Tommy Dreamer is on the screen outside of a wrestling ring, it's some kind of comedy gimmick, some kind of funny thing that he's doing. Obviously, he was very funny in Wrestle House. He was very funny doing the Wrestler's Court stuff. Doing the screaming no when Johnny Bravo gets shot at the wedding. Just the myriad of the different things that they expect out of Tommy Dreamer to go out there and still get over outside of the wrestling ring. So for me, Tommy Dreamer is the comedy wrestler of the year in Impact. So
respectable choice.
Yeah,
and he still wrestles too.
And he still wrestles too. And he had the Halloween hardcore match, which I thought was a lot of fun. And of course, anytime you need to see a kendo stick, he's got one for you. So, let's go on to best tag team in Impact. For me, it's because we are doing this just from Slammiversary on. It's probably a different answer if we're doing this from January 1st on. And the reason, of course, again, why we're doing it from Slammiversary on is because Sandy and I were not necessarily watching prior to starting this podcast. We kind of started with Slammiversary and went on from that point. So for me, the best Impact tag team is the Motor City Machine Guns. Honorable mention to the Rascals, as well as the North, of course. And of course, sad to see the Rascals go. I'll mention it every time that I have the chance to bring them up. I really hope they get some good feuds in NXT. Fingers crossed. But yeah, but the Motor City Machine Guns, since debuting, I think they've really been the best tag team in that division. They put out bangers every time, whether it's a singles match, tag match. Had a pretty good title run. Of course, Alex Shelley gets taken out and Saban has to go and basically wrestle for 30 minutes in a multi tag team match by himself as the only member of his tag team. So hats off to those guys. And I don't think there's a wrong answer in this division, truthfully. But for me, it's the Motor City Machine Guns, Dan.
I'm with you. They're really good, but my team is the North. I really
Sure.
enjoy those guys. Like I've told you before, I'm a sucker for headgear on a wrestler.
Who is it?
I like I like Josh Alexander. He's pretty hard hitting. I've watched some of his stuff with the collective too, so
Sure,
I've enjoyed him
Bloodsport.
outside of Impact as well. But yeah, I really like those guys. I can do without the Karate Man crap, but I feel like they've had a really good run since we started talking about it here at Slammiversary. I'm kind of sad that they might be broken up for good because I feel like they're pretty good together, but it might lead to better things for both of them. So that's my pick.
Yeah. Hey, listen, like I said, not a bad pick in the bunch. Of course, had Heath not gotten hurt, we might have been talking about Heath and Rhino in this spot. You never know.
Right.
I mean, probably not, but you never know. Moving on now to the women's division. We're going to talk best knockout, Dan. So, Dan, I got to ask, who is your best knockout so far?
So there's been some really good knockouts matches, but I've got to give it to Deonna. I was a fan of hers before she was in Impact, and I feel like every match I've seen her on Impact has been pretty good to great. I also feel like there's been some other girls that have also been good, but Deonna's just like head and shoulders above everybody else in the division to me.
Yeah, this is an award that we're going to agree on here, Dan. Deonna, since she came into Impact, has been absolutely fantastic. Every match that she's had has been pretty good. She's come up with new finishers. She's got the double arm breaker arm bar. She's got, of course, the Gotch style pile driver we mentioned earlier, which are things. I mean, she was always doing the Fujiwara arm bar, but not doing the double. And then to see her pick up a Gotch style pile driver too, that's pretty awesome. And she hits it very well. I will say that. And she also is working in one of the few promotions that will still let you do a pile driver on TV. Which had she
They
tried
love
to
their
do
pile
one,
drivers.
Impact is a pile driver promotion for sure. So it only makes sense that she picks one up there. Had she tried to do that when she was previously at WWE, they probably would have fired her sooner. So, or I don't know that she was fired. She might have asked for her release. Obviously, you never know exactly what it is. So I don't want to imply
She
that I
never
know
had the
anything about that.
opportunity to do a pile driver. They never let her wrestle.
I think she had maybe 2 NXT televised matches, and she
Right.
probably had, I mean, maybe 6 or so main event matches. And I'm not talking the main event of Raw or SmackDown. I'm talking the show main event, just to be clear.
I think
Which
she did make one like Raw appearance at some point, maybe.
I believe she debuted, and then I think she was pulled off of television because I'm sure Vince did not, quote unquote, like the look, so to speak.
Great. That old man's
'cause
blind. Who cares what he
I
thinks?
I completely agree. Listen, we all have access to Instagram, and we all know if that's the case, man, don't get it. But that to say, this is not a best Instagram award, but this is in fact a best knockout, and this is talking specifically about in-ring proficiency. So it makes sense that both of us would go with who many call one of the best technical, not just female wrestlers, but wrestlers that we have in the business right now, and Deonna Purrazzo. So congratulations, Deonna, for getting both of us to give you that award. Moving right along, we're just before we just for a clarification, we're not going to do a best knockout tag team award just because they still haven't actually awarded those titles. That'll be a discussion obviously for next year. But for this year, we're just going to not do that just because they haven't really had too many established tag teams for as long back as our look back period. It's really kind of been in the last 6 weeks. So just in case there was any questions around that. So we're going to move on, Dan, to best Impact wrestler. I did not put the tag male on this. I just said best Impact wrestler. So you could double up and say Deonna Purrazzo. I am not, and this is a discussion that is very difficult for me to decide on, just because there's been a lot of really good performances, a lot of sustained, week to week performances. You don't want to say this guy was the best because of a 2-week thing or a 3-week thing, but for the entirety of what we've been covering. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Dan, and I'm going to ask you your Impact Wrestler of the Year for 2020.
So in my opinion, I feel like Eric Young is the wrestler for me anyway. I feel like every time he's been like, there was a couple of shows like Bound for Glory where most of the show was kind of mid, and he's in that match in the main event and kind of they pulled the nose up. I feel like he's kind of saved him a few times with his matches. I feel like he puts in 100% in his matches. Sometimes the character's not really my cup of tea. But he really goes. I feel like he's still got a lot in him. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder from his time in WWE. I'm curious to see where the whole cult leader thing goes. I feel like he was the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with anything that you said. He really is wrestling like a man with something to prove. And when you're as good of a wrestler as Eric Young is, that's a pretty good combination, right? We've mentioned how Pile Driver happy Impact kind of is, and he does the best one on the Pile Driver promotion. So he's up there for me. Like you want to talk about, like, there's a couple of guys obviously that Impact relies on week after week to kind of carry the show. It's not Rob Van Dam, so I'm just going to go ahead and just
I'm not Tommy Dreamer,
is it? As much as I would love to give my dear friend Tommy Dreamer the award, it's not Tommy Dreamer. You talk about guys week after week that are out there. Chris Bay's out there every week. Willie Mack is out there every week. TJP is out there every week. Eddie Edwards is out there every week. Rich Swann is out there almost every week. But I'm actually in agreement with you, Dan, that really from Slammiversary, when he makes his return on, Eric Young is the guy. Every time they needed a big match on a card, Eric Young delivered. Whether that be the Eddie Edwards match, whether it be the Rich Swann match, so on and so forth. I mean, the guy really has elevated his game to the old Eric Young that we saw in these flashback moments from TNA, right? The younger Eric Young that came out and did all kinds of crazy shit and really put the world on fire, which ultimately, of course, got him signed to the WWE, right? And really, the early Sanity stuff was very good. And then he kind of, once they pulled him to main roster, Eric Young wasn't the same when we saw him. So it's been good to see Eric Young come back to catch fire, and really, just like you said, anytime they needed a big spot or to save a card, or just and especially a card like Bound for Glory that just kind of went off the rails. And obviously there was the Kylie Ray situation and everything that happened there, and everyone's like, oh my God, what happened? And they had the Hotshot Su Young, and then it was kind of like, all right, well, maybe this wasn't worth my $50. And then here comes Eric Young to throw out a banger, right? So yeah, I mean, Eric Young's got to be the choice, in my opinion. So, I think it's funny that, the consensus here, and I do want to give an honorable mention, of course, to Rohit Raju for the work that he did in the X Division.
Yeah.
The Defeat Rohit challenge was um, awesome. I mean, really, really good segments week after week. Rohit Raju is someone to me that elevated his game constantly and delivered some of the best promos in wrestling that we'd see week to week. So definitely, especially with Sandy not on the podcast, to say "my man" every time Rohit Raju is brought up. Um, which shout outs to Sandy. She's gotten Rohit Raju to like a couple of our tweets from the 8-Bit Suplex account. So that's pretty cool. And I'm not giving him shout outs just because he's liking our post. Maybe I am a little bit, but no, truthfully, really, it's been fun to spend this year watching Impact Wrestling and kind of discovering more alternatives and better alternatives sometimes to the products that we see on Mondays and Fridays. And sometimes even from the Wednesday product in black and yellow. So I've enjoyed it. I know, Dan, you kind of started watching it because of us starting this podcast and kind of talking about it so much. And I know that the same can be said for a lot of our group of friends that, Impact was off of the radar completely. So,
Right.
and then, there's always been stuff that you heard about it, but you never really felt the need to check it out. And I'm glad that we jumped in and decided to kind of start doing this.
Well, part of like I've talked to you about before when I went on here, part of the problem was accessibility. Like I don't
Right.
get Access TV, and on Tuesday nights I don't remember to go on Twitch usually. But
Right.
since I've been watching, that's changed, right? I was just catching the replays before, and now like actually watch on Twitch. And then with all everything that's going on with Kenny Omega and Dynamite and AEW and everything, now it's just like must watch TV. So
Yeah.
I'm excited that I started watching ahead, right?
Right. Yeah.
Before this actually took off. You guys can say you were ahead of the game and you knew this was going to take off. But now I'm really excited to see where this all goes, and I'm happy you guys did it. I'm happy you have me on here every once in a while. It gives me some, like you said, it's an alternative. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not, but at least it's an alternative. It's not the same old crap every
Right.
every Monday and Friday. So I appreciate it, and I enjoy listening to you guys talk about it too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been awesome. And then of course, starting the podcast and then, giving you and I both our first episodes of podcasting, Sandy's first episodes of podcasting, being able to have Rich and Jeremy, of course, who are the veteran of all veterans, having Floyd come on the podcast as well. And then, even my buddy Lane who hopped on to fill in with a video game segment. It's really been a really great experience, a great way to spend 2020, which has been such a challenging year for so many. And really, I don't think any of us have gone through this year unscathed. So it's been excellent to have this extra thing to do. And so before we sign off, I do want to wish everyone a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate, Kwanzaa, if you've already celebrated Hanukkah, or I'm so out of the loop, I don't know if Hanukkah is still going on, but whatever you celebrate,
It ended
whatever,
Friday, I think.
yeah, I think that's probably true. Whatever holiday you and your family celebrate, or if you don't celebrate holidays in the traditional sense, whoever you're with, make sure you enjoy this time together as we get out of this fuck of a year. And we look forward to vaccine rollouts and being able to see independent wrestling come back strong. If you see us at a show, definitely come up and say hi. Post vaccine, not pre-vaccine, or if you want to wave, maybe we'll see James at some point in 2021. Dan, you never know.
I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
James might have booked out until 2022. But Dan, thanks again for coming on. And I guess we'll do this again in 2021.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sign off, as always, make sure you check out all the Social Suplex Podcast Network shows. Keep It a Strong Style, One Nation Radio, Ricky and Clive, Great Match Generator, Grave Consequences, All Things Elite. I think that Grown, and of course, Grown Men Watch This Shit is back, so definitely check that out too. And then head over to Pro Wrestling Tees. I don't know if you can get a last minute present for Christmas still. You might be able to pay for some expedited shipping if you really want to get your loved one an 8-Bit Suplex or one of the other shirts from the Social Suplex Podcast Network on Pro Wrestling Tees /Social Suplex. But without further ado, happy holidays and stay safe, everyone.
These days, we're all getting more screen time, which means we're also getting more blue light exposure than ever before. Too much blue light can make your eyes feel tired, dry, or blurry. It can also affect your sleep. Zenni's Blocks lenses help to protect the eyes by keeping harmful blue light out. Because they're virtually clear, add blocks to any Zenni frame for stylish, all-day protection. Get a complete pair of prescription or non-prescription Blocks glasses starting at just $24. Protect your eyes now at Zenni.com.
Donato's just didn't add bacon to their pizzas. They added bacon to their bacon. Canadian bacon and hardwood smoked bacon. Or Canadian bacon and Chipotle seasoned bacon. Get $2 off a large bacon duo or any large pizza. Use promo code 2. Donato's. Every piece is important.